we have to get written consent from that person to forward the complaint to Simon's Force, to get the force to decide whether to record it or not. If the force decide not to record it, they have to write back to us to get permission not to do so. Meantime, the member of the public can appeal against their non-recording. Do I need to go on? I mean, this is just screwy. It's not a sensible system. It adds no value, and it adds lots and lots of paperwork and time. So one of the things that we concluded was that the system should be simplified, and that bureaucracy, which is not a safeguard, ought to be removed whilst retaining the safeguards. So there were 5 key improvements that we identified from our review. The first of which is that we collectively should focus on fixing the problem, not just identifying the culpability. So not just ask who's to blame and how should they be punished, but we should be asking what went wrong and how can it be put right. And we should try and make the system faster. It should deal with the problem now, not wait for several months while an investigation is conducted. It should be much more proportionate to the nature of the complaint that's being made. It should be much less costly. And we should really focus on learning. So yes, of course, there will be times when an individual should be punished, but actually the system needs to learn from the mistakes that were made. So we made our recommendations, and some of these we've been able to implement jointly with the Home Office, with policing organisations, because they didn't need legislation, but some do require legislation. And there have been a number of changes made, and I'll just mention the 4 of them. One was that it was good that at the same time as we were doing our review and taking account of that was the Taylor recommendations about changing the discipline and misconduct system. And those have really supported the proposal to focus on learning and greater responsibility by managers for ensuring that if there is misconduct, it's dealt with quickly and at the lowest possible appropriate level, so getting things resolved quickly. We then built on that and produced new stat guidance, which statutory guidance provides, if you like, the rules for the complaint system. It's like the highway code for the police complaint system, and it's available online, and it's been well received, the way it's written, and people find it a useful system. And again, it's focusing on fix the problem, make sure that we put things right early, apologise, explain where there's a necessity to do so, and making sure that there's a focus on learning out of it. It encourages upholding a complaint if something has gone wrong, even if an officer isn't culpable. So making sure that there's an acknowledgement to the member of the public that they did have a justifiable complaint. In addition, so the statutory guidance is a key part of changing the culture and helping forces to implement an early review of how that's going, because it's just about a year old, is very positive, and we're looking at that going forward. In parallel, we, the IPCC, produced a manual to help staff internally deal with complaints in the same spirit. We also have been working with forces on better performance data. In the past, all we had was national stats about numbers of complaints, which really told you very little. And instead, we've been developing a performance framework which measures the right things and helping forces judge their own performance in the complaint system against that. Again, that's been well received. And when I suggested over the summer that the cost-cutting measures might mean this would have to go, I had a deluge of police representatives telling me not to do this, which I thought was very interesting, that police were saying, don't do away with the performance framework. And we are going to do it. We are going to continue doing it, but in a more limited and cost-effective way over the next couple of years. So those are the things that have helped us implement the changes we wanted to see. There are some things that need legislation. The bureaucracy stuff I was talking about needs the legislation to be changed. And we're very hopeful that in the current bill on police reform and social responsibility, those measures will be inserted during its passage through Parliament. And And that will help to make the system simplified, less bureaucratic, more speedy. In addition, the government have taken the opportunity to propose that we, the IPCC, should be the people who deal with complaints against the police and crime commissioners, which I suspect will be a nice challenge for us in a couple of years' time when those motivated by political interests may wish to make complaints about corruption of PCCs, but we'll see what happens about that over the next 2 or 3 years. My successor may well be standing here or in some similar conference hall explaining that in about 2015, I would guess. Just thinking about the future, we're really keen to work with complainant bodies, community groups and the police to ensure that the system really focuses on the public's concerns and does take the opportunity to fix problems early, quickly. My experience is that if you apologise early, if you think you've got something wrong, it generally takes the heat out of the situation and helps you then work on what you can do next. It's when there's a long delay, nothing happens, and then the complainant gets a letter saying your complaint is not substantiated. That's when the public feels extremely let down. The second point I would make is that forces should regard complaints as really important feedback. The most well-performing commercial organisations really use the feedback from the public, the complaints from the public, to determine how they deliver their services. I don't think public service generally does this well, and certainly the police don't. It generally triggers quite a defensive reaction, not a thank you for your feedback, we're going to do something about it kind of reaction. And many police officers have said to me that the only people who complain are tow rags who are trying to get off. It's completely wrong. The profile of complainants are people like us. Middle class, many of you are not middle-aged, but middle class, middle-aged, white men complain about the police because they experience the police as rude and ineffective. They are your supporters who complain about you, not young criminals. So that's an important point for you to take away from this conference. We want the system to work more effectively, to respond to the public's concerns, to cost less and be more simplified. And there are a number of things that I've mentioned that will help us to do that. But ultimately, it will be the people who are in forces who are receiving the complaints and how they deal with those when they come in that will really transform the system and will help to make policing better for the future. Thank you, Simon.